Welcome to r/Pettyrevenge, where a jerk ruins his own career. Our next Reddit post is from Low Mope. During my freshman year at university, I'd been working on a group project with 4 people. We'd completed an experiment as part of a physics module, and each needed to write a report, approximately 2,500 words, to be assessed. As the deadline for this module fell slap bang in the middle of a really active few weeks, I took the uncharacteristically organized decision to write and submit my report a few weeks early. Job done. Free to party over varsity week. One of my colleagues left everything until the last minute and called me in a panic 2 days before the due date and asked if I could share my report with her so that she could understand how to structure the report and present the data. Me being a bit dopey and probably still a bit intoxicated from a week of partying, sent her my report in its entirety. The following day, the night before submission, she called me again and asked if I could proofread her report and make any minor adjustments I saw fit before she submitted. I agreed, and she emailed the document over. Much to my horror, she basically copied and pasted my entire report. I couldn't believe that she was moronic enough to send me the report to look at, given that she had plagiarized the whole thing. This is where I became quite vengeful and petty. I first used the find and replace function on Word and replaced commonly used words from our experiment with vulgarities. I then replaced a step-by-step methodology from our experiment with a step-by-step recipe for spaghetti bolognese. The data table was replaced with the box scores from the NFL games that weekend. I took the time to change the authors' names in her references to characters from Harry Potter. For example, Weasley et al. 2009, Dumbledore and Grindelwald 2008. To top things off, I rewrote her conclusion as a confession that she attempted to plagiarize my report. I sent the revised document to her and fully expected to receive an angry phone call in response. I did receive an angry phone call 3 weeks later when she was called in for a faculty meeting due to academic misconduct. Apparently, being the dingbat she was, she hadn't even proofread the document that I'd sent her and then just submitted it. She hadn't failed the module, but she was under threat of expulsion because she tried to blame me for the content of the document, so she had inadvertently admitted to attempting plagiarism. Upon returning to the faculty 5 years later as a research fellow, I discovered that the director of teaching had kept a copy of the report and routinely showed it to students as a warning not to plagiarize. Our next Reddit post is from It's Mobile Landman. I'm a contractor. While working on a project in a very remote location, I arranged to buy and bring 2 rounds of breakfast tacos for the staff of the county facility where I'd be working for the next week in exchange for free copy privileges. The boss gave approval on the phone, and the total for the tacos that week came out to just over $100. This was a great exchange, as the budget for the copy machine was upwards of $1,000. My receipts, along with the supporting credit card statements that I submitted at the end of the billing cycle, was declined by my boss. I wasn't too angry, but a deal's a deal, and I called the boss to remind him that he'd approved of this expense. His response: "You should have gotten it in writing." This pissed me off royally, but I finished the project as promised and was working on another project for another client less than a week later. A couple of months go by, and the boss, who chiseled me out of the $100, called me to see if I was available to work on another project, beginning on the 1st of the next month, and after some haggling, I agreed. The work schedule would be tight, and in his words, this was an all-hands-on-deck project with nights and weekends expected. I was also told that this was a new client and they wanted to impress him. A couple of days before the project was set to begin, my boss called me to tell me the engagement paperwork was on the way and to check my email. I told him I decided not to work on the project after all, and he was furious. He screamed, and I mean screamed, "You agreed to work on this project weeks ago!" I repeated his words verbatim. "You should have gotten it in writing." Down in the comments, we have this story from Family Guy. My boss owns 6 different companies. I deal with 5 of them. I heard there was a small problem on the 6th company that I don't work for and mentioned it to him. He told me to stay in your lane. Several weeks later, there was a big problem at Company 6. He asked me if I knew about it. I said, yeah, a couple of weeks ago. He got very pissed and asked me why I hadn't mentioned it. I told him I was staying in my lane, and he learned his lesson. Then beneath that, another story from Ashes of a Duralog. This happened with a job that I worked at a long time ago. The process that I'd been taught had a lot of flaws, so I tried improving it. The boss who taught me the process got insanely offended that I wasn't doing it exactly the way that he showed me. I tried to say, I think I know a better way, but he cut me off and said, "You don't get paid to think." All right, if that's how you want to play it. Not even a week later, one of his flaws in the process reared its head, and the boss is screaming at me, "Why didn't you think to check this?" Unfortunately for me, he wasn't in the mood to learn a lesson in being a better manager and fired me at the end of the day. I still feel like I got the last laugh, as they went out of business 6 months later. Our next Reddit post is from Outer Senshi. I have a coworker that I don't get along with. I tried being friendly with him when I first started, but he listened to a coworker who worked in my unit, and that coworker only ever spoke badly about me. She later admitted that it's because she has a hard time making friends, is shy, and sometimes being a little bit mean helps her open up. Anyways, this coworker Guy is only ever nice and helpful to the girls. For the longest time, I was the only guy in my unit. That means that if he had info that he needed to share with me, he would take it to my boss. If he had info to share with anyone else in my unit, he would come bearing gifts, usually Mexican or Japanese snacks. He prefers his private messages to be only from the girls in the office. Recently, he directly told me to only message him in the group chat. If it wasn't for the way that he treated me, I would have been okay with that. There's managers in the group chat, timestamps, etc. I began to message him in the group chat, but only to point out his errors, showing that he was making people wait up to an hour to hear from him on issues that normally take 2 to 5 minutes to get a response back on. I was sending messages that people are waiting for him and implying that he should be taking calls that he promises to take and not leaving them to flirt with girls in the office. In the last hour of the day, he came back to me and just quickly said, "Please send messages for me directly to me." But I didn't. He was, after all, very stern about me needing to message him in the group chat. Our next Reddit post is from Strange Marzipan. My 15-year-old daughter and I visited the local Humane Society on a weekly basis. It was free therapy for her, as cuddling the kittens and watching them play was a great endorphin rush. We were in the kitten room when a little girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, entered with her father. I watched as the girl manhandled the kittens, picking them up by their legs, hitting one in the head after it swiped at her, and listened to her whiny voice saying, "That one's ugly," or "Yuck, look at his eye, that's gross." She said this about a kitten who was obviously healing an eye injury. She eventually zeroed in on the only little orange and white kitten who was very chill despite her aggressive handling of it. She declared to her dad after a few moments that this was the one she wanted. Her dad asked if she was sure, and she said yes. She spent a few more minutes holding the cat up in the air, bouncing him around like a ball, and just really being a little turd. I stood up and went to the wall where all the cage cards were, and quickly found the sheet for the only orange kitten in the room. I took the card out of the slot and sat back down. After a few more minutes, I walked up to the little girl and nicely said, "Can I please have him? We're adopting him." She glared at me and said, "No, he's mine." Her dad walked over and I said, "We'd visited him earlier, and we even have his cage card. I'm sorry." He told his daughter to hand over the kitten, and she lost her mind. She carried on and screamed like a spoiled brat for 5 minutes, while holding on to the terrified kitten who was trying to get away. She only wanted the orange one and didn't like any of the other ugly kittens. It took her dad yelling at her to get her to finally throw the kitten across the room and then stomp away. My daughter went and picked up the kitten, and long story short, Otis has now been happily living his best life in my home for 7 years, and we love him so much. I hope that little twat never got a kitten. That was rSlash, and if you like this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.